Wake up, honey! New worst news of the year just dropped. Woo! So it was reported the other day that Sony is apparently in talks to buy Kadokawa. I'm Caucasian, I can't pronounce that. Which is the parent company of FromSoftware. And naturally, to anyone with any knowledge of gaming and AAA gaming and the trends that have been pursuing through the last few years of AAA gaming and big budget gaming, and definitely throughout of Sony specifically, this is the worst flippin' news that could have come out at any time. Now, before I get into the gaming side of things, I want to at least touch on the actual reason why Sony is doing this, because I'm sure Sony is not trying to buy Kadokawa for FromSoftware alone. In fact, I am absolutely certain they're not doing it for FromSoftware alone. I'm sure FromSoftware is a bonus, but the real reason Sony is trying to do this is pretty obviously this. Now, I am not an anime watcher. I'm not going to pretend like I am an anime watcher, but assuming this purchase goes through, Sony would have a near monopoly on anime distribution, which is a huge problem, but it's also something they've been trying to do for years now. And they've kind of been doing it in the background while everyone's not really looking. This would be a massive, massive problem for the anime industry. But I'm not going to talk about the anime industry because there are much more knowledgeable people that you can hear that side of the news from. You guys come to my channel for the gaming side of the news. And as a relatively new fan of FromSoft games, I absolutely adore every single FromSoft game that I've played. Even Dark Souls 2 is starting to grow on me a little more. This is the worst news that could have possibly come out, and I will explain to you why. Not only is it just obnoxious when the major console distributor buys a developing studio, because it will inevitably lead to more console exclusive content or console exclusive games, but this is Sony and FromSoft we're talking about. A working relationship that has not exactly been consumer friendly in the past, i.e. Bloodborne, i.e. Demon Souls, but this is also modern Sony, a publisher who has proven themselves to not really be concerned with gameplay and to be much more concerned with visuals, with presentation, with being cinematic, and being much more Game Award bait than actual video game. And then you have FromSoftware, a company who has repeatedly told the gaming industry to go fuck yourself and get good at the video game or play something else. And I respect the hell out of them for that, and a lot of people respect the hell out of them for that. The reason why a lot of people are really frustrated and really worried about Sony owning FromSoftware is because there is a direct and obvious conflict of design philosophy between them. And I'm not saying you can't enjoy Sony games, I'm not saying Sony games are all bad, but there is a very clear and undeniable conflict of design philosophy when it comes to video games between Sony and FromSoftware. Sony makes cinematic experiences that appeal to people of all skill levels, and everyone can play, and then there's a whole bunch of long cutscenes. It's so emotional storytelling, which we tell by having you watch a long cutscene or hold forward on the joystick for 10 minutes while getting talked at, and then there's a combat arena, and then we hold forward, and then there's a combat arena, and then there's a cutscene, and then there's a combat arena, and then there's a cutscene, then we hold forward, and then there's a combat arena. That is all Sony fucking makes. I'm not saying you can't like it, but I am telling you without a shadow of a doubt that this design philosophy will be forced on FromSoftware, whose design philosophy is, hey, here's a game world, here's you, figure it out. If you can't figure it out, play something else. In the AAA industry, FromSoftware is a beacon of what AAA gaming can still be, and what design philosophies in AAA gaming can still be. FromSoftware is really the only AAA developer concerned about pushing video game narrative and storytelling forward with things that are unique to video games. The reason why I get so annoyed, and why a lot of people get so annoyed at the whole hold forward while getting talked at, or watch this cutscene in between combat arenas, is because it is the laziest way to tell a story through video games. It is the safest way to tell stories through video games. Meanwhile, FromSoftware immerses you in these worlds. They have you discover these game worlds at the same pace that your character is. Dark Souls 1 is one of the most effective and immersive stories in gaming because of the way the story is told to you. Not just the story itself. And that's also why a lot of die-hard PlayStation fans and a lot of just die-hard AAA-minded people don't understand the appeal of FromSoftware games. FromSoftware games not only don't hold your hand, they refuse to hold your hand. And that's the point. And if you don't think that Sony's influence is going to be shoved into FromSoftware games, assuming they get ownership of them, you have not been paying close enough attention to the industry. And this is concerning. But that's enough doom and gloom. Let's talk about the saltiness that came from this announcement, because obviously this is a fanboy salt channel and people want to see the fanboy salt, and boy oh boy was there flippin' fanboy salt coming out of this announcement. So strap in, because we're about to make fun of a bunch of PlayStation fanboys completely missing the point of why people are concerned about this acquisition. Starting with Spectre V says, let me get this straight. So it's fine for Microsoft and Xbox to buy both Activision Blizzard and ZeniMax with all its studios. That's good for competition, but when rumors circled around that PlayStation might buy FromSoftware and the companies around it, that's a bad thing. What are the companies around FromSoftware? What are you talking about with that? FromSoftware is part of a parent company that's being bought. You don't even understand the situation. But yes, that is a bad thing. I'm not going to say that it was a good thing for Activision and ZeniMax to be bought by Microsoft, but if there's something that most of us can agree upon, it's that design-wise, the games being made by Activision and ZeniMax have remained pretty much the same since Microsoft bought them, because Microsoft, unlike Sony, has a dedication to a wide variety of gameplay styles in their first-party games. Sony explicitly does not have that opinion of their first-party games. That's not me speculating, that is literally what they say. Microsoft explicitly is dedicated to having a wide variety of gameplay styles and gameplay approaches to their first-party titles. Sony explicitly prioritizes visuals and story and cinematic presentation and mainstream appeal out of their first-party games. There is an explicit difference in design philosophy. That's not people saying that it's okay when Microsoft does it or that it's good when Microsoft does but bad when PlayStation does it. That is a different discussion entirely. That is a different conversation. The conversation being had right now is how long FromSoftware has until they're just made part of Sony's mold. Because believe it or not, some people don't want that. TrueGamer1111 says a lot of idiots are acting like Sony and FromSoftware haven't worked together before, and they show a picture of Demon Souls and Bloodborne. Ah, yes. Okay, it's fine because Sony and FromSoftware have worked together before on Demon Souls, a game that Sony infamously hated, and it wasn't until the game was proven to be something that people actually wanted that Sony started to pay attention to it retroactively. Like, this is well documented. Sony was not a fan of Demon Souls. And then you have Bloodborne, a game that Sony refuses to do anything with. Bloodborne is still being held hostage on the PS4 at sub 30 frames per second. And you think this is a good example of what Sony and FromSoftware can do together? FromSoftware openly says they want Bloodborne to be ported to other platforms and updated for the new generation, and that it's Sony's fault that the game is being held back. You really think this is a good representation of what they can do together and what can be achieved? This is really the best you got? Holy shit. It is truly not about games to you people. It literally is just about increasing the list of exclusives. Hey you! Would you like to be part of the Doofus Club? The Doofus Club! It's my channel membership club, so you can be a doofus alongside the Groovy Banana, the Scrum Master, Crumpet Kun, Curtin Allen Spack, Rob C, Veg, Gextar, Billet 310 Char, Master of Nothing, Wannabe Hobo, Westa, Totally Not Retro, Jidge, Joey Scoops, Puddin' and Joe Taku. Do you want to be a doofus alongside them? Then head on down to the Join Channel button and sign up for $1 a month. You'll get emojis, you'll get shoutouts and videos, you'll get that little star thing next to your name so everyone knows how much of a doofus you are.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, of course not.
So join the Doofus Club today, because a house full of doofuses divided against itself... Wait. Fuck, I had the joke. Hang on. Because a house divorced is... I said divided and doofus at the same time. A hoose... Fuck, okay. Oh, God. Okay, never mind. Just join the channel. YMNIS says, me listening to ABK cheerleaders whine about FromSoftware becoming a PlayStation studio, because again, ABK Studios remained relatively unscathed by Microsoft's acquisition. They certainly, I mean, they're not great studios, but they didn't get any worse. But that's the other thing. Activision was a shit company that got bought out, and they continue to be a shit company. FromSoftware is one of the most beloved studios in gaming because of how they go against the AAA mold, a AAA mold that is largely being pushed forward by PlayStation. These are not the same situation. Japan hates Xbox, as honestly justice will be done when every single Souls game is pulled off Xbox and Xbox never receives another game from FromSoftware ever again. This is a great day for gamers everywhere. Keep Souls off Xbox. I mean, do I even have to respond to this one? Do I even have to elaborate? Again, it's not about games to you people. It never has been. It's not about what's best for the industry. It's just my corporation versus your corporation. And who gives a shit about anything else? I mean, look at this. This is how you spend your fucking Tuesday? What is wrong with you? After the news dropped, I quote tweeted it and said, "Wake up, honey, new worst news ever just dropped," in my wonderful way that you all think is great and funny, and go follow me on Twitter. But I got some interesting responses here. Reaver says, "Didn't like Elden Ring, so Sony can do whatever they want." Smile. I mean, I don't really like JRPGs in the traditional sense, not in the Souls-like sense, like the Persona metaphor sense. I don't really like those kinds of JRPGs. But if Atlas were bought out by like Ubisoft, yeah, I'd be concerned. I would have concerns over the creativity of the gaming industry. If EA went out of their way to buy the Persona IP, I'd be like, fucking why? That's concerning. Believe it or not, it is possible to empathize with gamers who like games that you don't like, especially when there are such obvious issues with potential future timelines and acquisitions and management of studios. My God. Don Trump Leone says, "Cry about it, laugh." And then Lord Jamar responds, says, "Just look at his profile and the stuff he types. It makes sense he would be like this." Referring to me. It makes sense that I would be like this. Just reminder, I said it's the worst news ever that Sony would buy FromSoftware. And you're like, look, it makes sense that he would think this. Fucking how? Like genuinely how? What did I say? How did I hurt you? Who are you? It always makes me laugh when people do this. People come into my comments, and they come into my like tweet replies, and they're like, "Of course, Joe from Seattle's talking like this." And it's like, that's not, you realize that's not a counter to my points, right? Referring people back to the words that I say is not really a counter to the words that I say. I mean, by all means, reference people to the words I say, because the words I say are correct, and people will follow me if they read them, because unlike a lot of people on this fucking internet, I actually have confidence in the words that I say. The words that I say, I am confident are correct. I encourage you to read what I have to say. It's just a pet peeve of mine. Anyways, moving on. Okay, one more by someone who tried to quote tweet me and then got a whopping no likes out of it. Nice job. You did great. Really showed me. They say, "Has Sony ruined any gaming franchise under their tent?" Concord would like a word with you. Spider-Man is not ruined. No, he's not ruined, but he's definitely taken a step backwards. Uncharted is not ruined. No, it's not ruined, but it's in need of a complete reboot, because it's dead. Ratchet and Clank is not ruined. No, it's not ruined, but Sony also turned a whimsical and very personality-filled third-person action franchise into a glorified tech demo for the PS5 SSD. So not a great example. Last of Us Part 2 had some issues, but it's not totally ruined. First of all, Last of Us Part 2 is not a franchise, it's one game. And also, Last of Us has been released like 78 times, so not really doing a great job dismissing the concerns. Horizon is not ruined. It has to be good in the first place to be ruined. So what's the problem? Thinking, hashtag PlayStation. What an incredible rebuttal you've made to all of my points. I feel so incredibly rebuted right now. Mom, get the fucking napkins and wipe up all of this rebute that I've leaked all over the floor. Sony going through with this purchase would be devastating not only to the anime industry, but it would also very potentially lead to the complete change and the complete detriment of one of gaming's most acclaimed publishers, or developers, excuse me. There is a fundamental disagreement between Sony and FromSoftware when it comes to how video games should be developed and how the video games should be distributed, how video games should be preserved, should be updated. This is not hard to understand. This isn't about console warring. This is about a great, extremely talented studio, very possibly being changed for the worse by a publisher who has spent the last 2-3 years just screaming out to the world that they have no idea what actual gamers want, and that they have no idea how to actually push the medium of video games forward. This is not hard to understand. God damn it. Okay, toodles.